Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Eaton, and I'm the Associate Director of the McCarthy's Venture Mentoring Network here at Northeastern University. I am thrilled to have you join us today for this panel session on marketing and social media for startups. This event is part of a series of events called Masterclasses in Innovation, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship, and it is co-hosted by the Venture Mentoring Network, Alumni Relations at Northeastern, and the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. A couple of housekeeping items here while we're all together. This event is being recorded, so please remain on mute. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And towards the end of the event, in the last 15 to 20 minutes, myself and our moderator will open it up to those Q&A questions and have a discussion. Now, without further ado, I would like to turn the microphone over to Anna Rychlik to introduce herself and our wonderful panelists. Over to you, Anna.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Rychlik. I am a fifth year here at Northeastern studying business and design. So naturally, the intersection of marketing and graphic design oftentimes falls in social media. So I'm super excited to talk with our panelists today. I'm really excited to be here, and this feels like a really great way to wrap up my 5 years at Northeastern. I'm graduating in about 2 weeks, so it'll be so great. Before we begin, I would just love to hand it off to our panelists to introduce themselves. Either one of you feel free to start, and then we'll get into the questions.
I'll jump in. Erin Yasgar, graduated class of 91. And I have primarily spent my marketing career in entertainment and built my digital chops, building out early digital and new media departments for various companies inside Universal Music. I currently own my own agency, Silver Lake Digital, and we still focus on entertainment, but also help startups, large companies across all channels, with all channels of marketing. So not just social, but also paid, as well as earned and owned media. And I am looking forward to the conversation today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adebukola, Ajao, and I graduated from the School of Professional Study, College of Professional Studies in the digital media management degree, and I'm so excited to be here today. I was actually born and raised in Roxbury, actually just a few blocks away from Northeastern, so it is just always full circle to be in these spaces. I'm a digital marketer and consultant. I have my own digital agency where I work with primarily small businesses, especially small businesses who have recently had to pivot their businesses because of the pandemic. So a lot of our work is centered around that and helping small businesses understand marketing. So thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like both of you have really amazing experience within both the marketing and social media space. So just to kick off the panel, I wanted to start by defining social media. How do you guys define social media in your own jobs? What do you consider to be social media, and what do you not consider to be social media?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. So sorry, I'm like, who's going first? Sorry for that delay, everyone. So for me, social media really runs the gamut of anything that involves a social network. So I think sometimes people mistake social media just for digital media, like just because it's digital, it's social media, and it's not necessarily the case. So apps like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, these are all places where people convene to be social. Your blog is not social media, your website's not social media, but it can lead to those things. I know that can often be hairy grounds, but I also think that people oftentimes don't see spaces like Reddit or Nextdoor as social media, or Pinterest as social media, and they totally are. And so I just want people to know that social media is any place where you are meant to be social. Like before Instagram became a place for business, it was a place where you could just share your photos and get to see what people are doing every second, right? And now it's really centered around helping small businesses. But that's how I see social media and how I explain social media to clients.
Awesome.
I would agree with that. I think sometimes people also put messaging in social media, and messaging is really a one-to-one place where that happens. So you'll hear a lot of people put SMS in the social media bucket, or even though WhatsApp can support groups, it's usually private groups. But you also can't forget professional social media like LinkedIn. There's also voice-driven social media now with Clubhouse. So again, anywhere that those groups can form and be built, and conversation is happening around a topic or within that group or around a product is what I would also look at as social media.
Awesome. I think this leads really nicely into something I want to talk about next. A few of the social media platforms both of you mentioned have really come up in the last year or so, specifically Clubhouse and some of those other things. And there's been so much change in the social media landscape throughout the last 1 to 5 years. Could each of you talk a little bit about how you've navigated these changes in social media over the past few years and sort of how that's like impacted your careers? Erin, if you want to start and then pass it over.
I've seen social come and go. I think it's really hard to know where to focus your efforts with the constant change. I think the more important question is, which social media network should you focus your efforts on rather than all of them? So depending upon what your business is, you can't be all things to all people. I had a client conversation yesterday where, they were trying to do 9 channels, and they have a 3-person internal department, and we support them with their paid social, but really had to stop and think, where are the audiences? Where is my audience? So staying focused, I think, is really important, and allowing yourself to say, you know what we do doesn't work on TikTok. Like, it's not, we're not going to create fun little bits for TikTok every day. It just doesn't go with what we need, but we are going to do pretty well on Snapchat because that is our audience in a different way. It's a little bit more broadcast. It's a different type of engagement. So really looking at who is on there, because each of these platforms also has a personality. Pinterest is food, decorating, and design. Those are Pinterest 3 big buckets. You wouldn't go and do a Snapchat campaign if you were working on a food company. So I think thinking about what your product is, who your audience is, and then really we do an exercise where we literally put each channel on a column and start mapping audiences to the channels to try and help people prioritize and determine which channels they want to focus on.
Great.
Yes, for me, I think I always start off by saying that social media and marketing, all those things are not easy. It's never easy, especially as things, I think that's just like a really important premise, because if it was easy, we wouldn't be here talking about ways that we could help you or help ourselves grow on these platforms. So I think you kind of have to, especially as a small business owner or as a startup, be able to kind of move quickly and innovate quickly when different opportunities come. I mean, within the last week, Instagram has come up with so many different features that people are now like, oh my, like now I have to learn these and use these, because at the end of the day, we don't own social platforms. We don't own Facebook, we don't own Instagram. So if Instagram created something in their world, that something is a product. And whoever uses that product, they're going to push that person's content out a little more. So a lot of the strategy that I put around with my clients is to please take a hold of all of the features that the platform gives you, because it's their product. This is how they are growing their own business themselves. So use it. And sometimes that can be frustrating because there's that learning curve. Maybe you don't know how to use it. Maybe you're not used to it. Maybe you were already working on something that just came out with a week ago and now you have to change. So it's Erin's right. You really have to do what makes sense and what is more useful for your business at the time, because you will just find yourself doing everything and then nothing at all. And I also think that, with the proliferation of so many other platforms, the platforms that we're heralding today might not exist tomorrow. I don't know if anybody here has ever used MySpace, and we felt that was it. We were, oh my God, like we thought that was, oh yeah, MySpace. I'm doing advertisements, I'm coding, I'm doing all these things, and now MySpace doesn't even exist. Like, I'm sure if you asked a Gen Z or what MySpace was, they'd probably blink twice, right? So it's really important to know that, again, we don't own these platforms. At any point, anything can happen. Elon Musk just bought Twitter, for heaven's sake. I mean, it's just the wild, wild west in the social media world. So I really think it's important to take a hold of what makes sense for you at the moment and try not to do everything, because everything might not work for you.
Totally. I didn't ever have a MySpace account, so I think I have an example of someone who sort of like missed that wave and has been like super immersed in all of these new social medias and noticing things changing so fast. Bouncing back to something you said, what are some of your specific tips or tricks for people who are working with social media for startups specifically? Like how do people begin to even navigate that if they're starting their own small business or company?
For me, I would always say is to acquire your digital real estate. Digital real estate is a thing. And I think it's really important. I don't care if you never use these platforms ever in your life. The first thing you do as a startup, if you have your name, you registered it, you trademarked it, whatever you do, go out and claim your space on every platform possible. That's something that's so mundane, but will literally save you. You will not know how many people I've had to negotiate with someone else who's already bought their domain name for a business, and they might own that name, but someone long before you, before you even thought of this business, now owns it. And I mean, once you buy someone's domain name, you could sell that domain name back to them for whatever, because now, they're kind of in your court. So that's the very first thing. I just have to get that out. Please claim all the space. I don't care if you don't use Pinterest. I don't care if you don't use Reddit. Go on there, claim your space, get your name. And who knows, you might grow there. I had a client one day find a really, really major customer on Reddit who just happened to find their stuff on Reddit. They don't even go on Reddit, right? So I bring up Reddit because I think just in general, there are so many other social media spaces that people don't take a hold of and don't use. They just typically use Facebook and the Instagrams, but there's so many other places where people convene, and they're looking for people to communicate with them, and they're looking for places to buy things or to connect with startups. So definitely don't just stay in one place. Diversify your portfolio of where you are as far as social media and marketing.
That's so great. Erin, do you have anything else to add?
I love the comment to go out and grab your name. I've been in a number of those. It's painful. For a long time, literally every single thing that came out, I even grabbed my own name, just because I didn't want somebody else to have my name. But that is probably the number one thing that you can do, is to go out there. I even think as part of branding research and naming research, you should see what's available and out there. I recently went through a client engagement where, they came up with their brand, they came up with everything. They didn't bother checking if the URL was available, if the handles were available. And I thought, really? Like, we're going to go and we're going to get every single handle for you? Like, you didn't do this research before you decided to name your company? So even, way back to before you even have the company name, doing that kind of investigation as part of your branding is super, super, super important. Otherwise you will stumble. It will be hard. And I think the other thing from a startup perspective is, you can't do everything. And making sure that you're utilizing some of the free tools that are out there that can help you manage, rather than logging into, every individual platform. And there's ways of syndicating content across platforms, connecting posts, etc. Not putting the pressure on yourself that you always have to be publishing. So a lot of startups want instant following. And I always say that social is the world's largest cocktail party. And you can either go to the party and be the drunk guy standing on the table yelling, me, 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 pay attention to me. And everybody's going to turn their back on you and walk away because you're just a narcissistic fool. Or you can work the room and you can go around and you can comment on people's shoes and their clothes, and that you read their book that they wrote, or you saw the movie that they were in, you tried their product, you saw change their house color. Then you can start talking about yourself. So just don't expect to immediately just gain that following, because you're starting off by speaking into a vacuum, and you need to engage around other people's content, not your own content right away. Do not put the pressure on yourself to constantly publish your own content. It is social, it is conversation and engaging and figuring out what your community is on that social platform and engaging with that community, ignoring everybody else that you don't need to pay attention to. Just think about who's at the party that you care about, that you want to notice you, and start engaging with what they publish.
Definitely. I think that is really great advice. You guys both gave such wonderful advice. And I think keeping those in mind are going to be super important for people starting out. Erin, you touched a little bit on like content, but what do you guys think about trends in social media? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Do you advise that people who are starting off their own brand like follow trends, or do you think like how do trends sort of play into your work, both of you?
My question would be, how are you defining trend?
I guess like the way that I think of trends at least are little bits of culture that people pick up on and then really run with on social media, whether that's like a meme or something that happened at the Met Gala last night, or like stuff that people are talking about, then every single social channel, every brand finds their own way to make a comment on. What do you guys think about that?
I think if it's relevant, you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a healthcare brand, should you be commenting on the Met Gala? Not so sure that's a hashtag you need to jump in on, right? But if you're a shoe brand, if you're a clothing brand, if you're even a really nice food brand, like a luxury gourmet food brand, those kinds of things make sense. So from a trend perspective, again, it's, my question is it relevant to you? Is it going to help you? Or are you just trying to jump in on a hashtag that really has nothing to do with your company? If it's a bigger issue, we talked about this a little bit in our preparation, one of my favorite social media moments was when the Supreme Court passed the same-sex marriage law, and you saw brands across every channel, from banking to healthcare to retail. Everybody was doing something with, rainbow. So I feel like that is a different kind of, that and the Met Gala are two very different things. And I think from the meme perspective, again, jumping in on it, if you have the ability to jump in on it, if you have an audience that'll appreciate it. But sometimes, depending on, if you're serious, I don't think you'd see Chase Bank jumping in on the post a photo of your mother meme. But making those decisions is something that should really be, it shouldn't be an individual opinion. If you're a one-person startup, yes, but it should really also be related to your brand tenets, your brand guidelines, and what you as an organization want to do in that space.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think what makes marketing so innovative and fun is if you're able to take two things. Like, again, if you're a healthcare company, there's so many ways I could have seen how the Met Gala could have probably connected to a healthcare brand, right? But that takes like intuition and creativity to even be able to make those connections. And you know, Erin, you're so right. Like if you can't do that well though, then steer clear from it because you don't want to offend your audience. You don't want to do stuff that doesn't make sense. So that is the tricky part, is that you could make things relevant, right? Maybe there is someone at the, at the Met Gala who owns a healthcare company or did something bad at a healthcare company, and you can make it relevant to start a discussion. There's a lot of romance brands that went crazy when someone proposed to their loved one at the Met Gala, right? Like that was a really big moment, and that's something that I see a lot of people clinging to, and that's relevant. Although the Met Gala is not really relevant with love and romance, right? But something romantic happened there, so they're able to get onto that. So it's not as rigid as, oh, you're completely irrelevant, from this, idea, so I can't use it. You just have to find that those really important pockets of relevance. So I think that's really important. I think as far as trends, there are some trends that you should always do. And I think the trend of just new products and features, like, again, if a social media platform offers you a new product or feature, try to use it and see what you can gain from it. But that doesn't mean, like, for example, Reels, you should use Reels, but that doesn't mean you should use every sound that Reels comes out with or every popular thing that comes up, because it might not be relevant to you. It might not be appropriate for you, or it might turn your audience off. So it's really important to use the product, but don't use every single, element of that product if it's not relevant for your business. So that's kind of my take on trends. It can be, again, really tricky. You just have to really figure out what works for your business, what works for your audience. And this is why, above all else, understanding your audience, studying your audience, listening to your audience is the key here. Because if you know that your audience is not, really doesn't like a certain message or doesn't speak a certain way, then you already know, okay, this is off of the list for us. So I think that's really the premise of it all, is to really understand and know your audience, because without that, I mean, it's like shooting in the dark.
Totally. I think that's so important. And I think, that's so just like essential to developing a brand in general. And then like speaking on that brand voice is super great. Going back to a point you made about the target audience, what advice would you give to people who are trying to attract a specific target audience, and like how do they expand their reach while also making sure that they're hitting like those people that they want to hit, whether it's for product or service or anything else?
I think be where your audience is the most important thing. Part of market research isn't only to look at, okay, how many percentage of women shop here, right? It's not just about the percentages and the data and statistics. All those are really important. I'm not like a numbers person or a math person. Like, my brain hurts when I think of those things. I'm more of like the touchy-feely, empathetic person that would get in a room full of stakeholders and ask them questions and, take stories and extract those stories into like personas. Like that's me. I'm that person. But I really love conversation, because you get to learn deeply on the human side what people want. And if you're able to connect with people deeply, you're able to connect with their mindset and the psychology of it all. And I think that is really powerful, because we're all humans, right? We have feelings. We all love something. We all hate something. We all need something or desire something. And to be able to hear someone say that, an audience, someone that can potentially be in your audience, say something, or like sometimes I do some social listening. So I'll go on Twitter and see what people are saying. Like people literally give us access, thank God, to their thoughts 24/7. Like, God bless you. Like, thank you. So I spend a lot of time on Twitter and go through hashtags and kind of see what people are saying. A lot of my audience members and the audience of a lot of my clients are people of color. So I go to the Black Twitters. It's AAPI month. I go to those spaces and say, what are people talking about? What are they saying? What's important to them right now in the know? And kind of try to attract our audience by saying, hey, we, want to enter this conversation, or we have something that will solve the problem to what you're talking about. So I do read a lot of stories from users, and whatever product my client has is actually a solution to their problem. So that's another good thing too. And I think that's another thing that's powerful about marketing. It's not just about like tricking people into buying your stuff. Like, you have stuff that people may need, right? Like, if I have a baby and, my client has like a skincare brand, and maybe their skincare product could help this baby with like a diaper rash or something, and the mom has tried everything and it doesn't work. I mean, these are real stories, like in real life. They've tried everything and it doesn't work, but I have something that may help. Like, you should be able to find that person. That person should be able to find you. Like, that's the beauty of marketing. It's not just about vanity, like, oh, I just want to make a lot of money, or I just want to look cool. And I think sometimes social media gives us that cool factor, but people really need things. And if your startup or your business is all about solving that person's problem, you should be able to connect with that person, and they should be able to find you. So I think connecting with your audience more on a human level is important to me. I know that's not the only part. I do think, data, statistics, and all those things are extremely important in understanding where people are, how many people think things. So you can't just go off of one narrative, but narratives are so important to me because it's just so deeply human, if that makes sense.
That makes a ton of sense. I think there's something so wonderful about sort of understanding stories and narratives. Like, something that I really appreciate is sort of like visual storytelling and storytelling through social. And I think what you said really resonated in terms of, talking to people, learning their stories, because ultimately you're not just posting for a bunch of screens, you're posting for people who are behind those screens and trying to interact with them. And I just think what you said was really beautiful. Before we move on to the next question, Erin, do you have anything else to say about that, about reaching your target audience?
Yeah, I think it's the relevance. And again, I think people, when they start, have a tendency to spread themselves really thin. And social just requires constant prioritization, ongoing, because you can get really distracted very easily. And if you have your target audience well defined, if you know who you are going after, and staying true to that, it's great when other people discover you. Went through a product positioning recently where it was a digital archive system, a digital asset management system, and they found that different people were discovering their tool that they had not really built for those people, and they were getting new customers, and they started to think, well, should we shift who we talk to on social about our product, because these people have discovered 3 other uses for our product that we really didn't develop it for, but they didn't have the resources. Again, it's about limited resources, figuring out who to stay focused on, and go where your audience is. And again, that might be a channel, but then even within the channel, within Pinterest, where is your audience inside Pinterest? That alone, each of these worlds is a huge, large world in and of itself. So having that clearly defined, this is who we are trying to reach. This is what they are interested in. This is what they are talking about. And keeping yourself relevant to the conversation of your target audience is going to be the best way to reach them.
Thank you. I really appreciate how both of you really broke that question down. I think both of those answers provided hopefully really helpful insights to people who are thinking about starting off their own social channels or working on their own projects. I think that both of you come with a super interesting perspective, which I really appreciate. Now on to a question that we talked a little bit about in the planning session. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered while working in social media? I know this is a super broad question, so feel free to narrow in, talk about a specific instance or anything you feel comfortable with. Adebukola, you can start.
Yes, I think I forgot what we talked about during the planning session, but I think now that I'm like thinking about it again, I think one of the hardest things is that it's just so hard to grow on these platforms these days. I mean, even 3 years ago prior to the pandemic, and 5 years ago and 10 years ago, it's just so easy to just like go on there, post things, and people follow you, like your stuff, seemed interested. And then the algorithm, right? The big bad wolf has come along and has made it inextricably difficult, if not impossible, for people to now find stuff. So you can create killer content. I mean, you could hire a whole agency, right? I've seen people do this and still not get the results you want. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Doesn't mean you didn't put in the work. It doesn't mean you don't understand. So I think it's the vanity metrics. I don't want people to feel like if they're not doing well on social media, they're not doing well. I mean, your audience definitely lives outside of social media, and is why I've been a big advocate for people building their own digital real estate, a website, and posting content on their website, and actually having communities outside of social media. I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers when Facebook shut down, and that was a really interesting day. I think at least 3 clients cursed me out personally. Like, I don't own Facebook. It's not my fault. Like, there's nothing I can do about it, right? And so that really pushed me to like motivate my clients to actually do things outside of social media. Social media is not the only place. Social media it's just one category of marketing. There's so many things you can do to connect with your audience. And so, that is a really, really major challenge. And now insert the metaverse, we don't even know where that's going, right? And it's just so many different things that are coming up, and it can be extremely overwhelming, even as a marketer, right? So the small businesses and the startups are anxious, and we're anxious too. Like, we truly are. And I don't think enough marketers and creatives, I don't think we talk about this enough. It's really, really challenging these days to grow on these platforms. So I really encourage people to continue to use these platforms. It's still relevant, still important, but find different ways. Like, one thing I highly recommend is a newsletter, like consistently speaking to people directly, because the thing about social media is that people can actually scroll. Like, people can look at something that you wrote or did and just decide they don't want to view it. But if I email you, you kind of don't really have a choice. You've already seen the email, you've already read the headline, now you're interested. Now you're like, should I open that? I don't want to miss something. And now they open it, and now it's just you and your customer. There's no scrolling, there's no other people trying to get their attention. It's just you and them. Writing content on your website, bringing that traffic to you, so that again, if Facebook decides to shut down one day, your customers automatically know, I can just go on the website and there's probably an update there. Or I can go somewhere else and I'll get a group text message from them, because text marketing is a thing now, right? So I just highly, highly encourage people to not feel, number one, that they're not doing well if their social media is not doing well, or if they don't have 1 million followers, but also to utilize other forms of digital marketing at their disposal to connect with their audience, because it's just challenging all around. So
that's super great advice. One quick follow-up question to that. Do you have a favorite sort of platform or program for newsletters? I know there's so many out there, but I didn't know if you had any to suggest.
There are so many. Oh my God. I actually, for my own personal newsletter, aside from being a consultant, I also have a media platform for small business owners where I provide them resources and tools. And so I just use the newsletter that comes with my website provider, which is Squarespace. And that's worked pretty well. But if we're talking about as a startup, you need to be using platforms that make it easy for you to retarget customers and things of that nature. And I know a really big, one of the biggest, e-marketing platforms is Klaviyo. Really, really good program. And there are a bunch of programs out there. And, I think it just takes a matter of research to figure out what's best for you. But places like Klaviyo are really good. But again, if you have a website provider, like if they offer that to you, go ahead. I also use Wix for my business website. And I use Wix, platform too. And it's really, really good. And I've been able to reach all of my clients and customers and some audience members, soft and hot leads and things like that. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I think sometimes it's so intimidating, sort of like where to even begin. So that piece of knowledge is super helpful. Hopefully it gives people a jumping off point. Now back to Erin, do you want to talk about a challenge that you've experienced?
Right now, the challenges that we face sort of stem from I think what you were saying about, if your social media isn't doing well, don't get down on you. You can't achieve to build a brand through one channel. It's just not possible. And the channel of social media for quite some time before it grew and grew and grew, you were able to reach people. Organic reach, which is there's paid reach and there's organic reach. And so if you have a decent following of people and you post something right now, organic reach is down in the 1% range. 1%, you will be lucky if 1% of the people that follow you see what you posted. If you put some money behind it, you'll bump it up a little bit. You might hit the 5% range if you put a decent amount of money. But keeping those numbers in mind and the way the system works, you can't just rely on social media as your only tool. And people have a tendency to think of social media as the free tool. And it is free to a certain extent. But it isn't free. The engagement part of it is more important than the content part of waiting for people to come to you, going out and using social media to go find people, being the proactive engager in places. That is free. You can go make comments anywhere for free. You can go strike up a conversation for free. But thinking that I'm posting good stuff, and because I have 100,000 followers, that 50,000 of them are going to see it, is very, very, very unlikely. Things are also changing with the ability to track analytics. So Facebook has gotten rid of Facebook analytics. There's a lot of changes in the way that the internet as a marketing tool operates, that the digital advertising industry is facing, that are crushing. Anybody who has tried to analyze the campaign and was able to manage to put a Facebook pixel on your Shopify website for the t-shirts you're selling, that is going away. Facebook is discontinuing the tracking pixel, and it happens on June 30th. And it is going to be a shot heard around the world because not enough people even understand or know that it's fully being discontinued. It's going to change how we can track spend of metrics, the metrics against how we spend advertising money. You won't know if you got a conversion anymore. There are tools that Facebook is putting together that can help. They're very complicated. Without a decent IT lift, without a decent code lift, you're going to have a challenge with that kind of tracking. So digital advertising in the biggest platform right now of Facebook and Instagram is going to be a very big challenge in terms of paid media. Pixels from Pinterest have not been discontinued yet. Snapchat still has their pixels. When you start to think about, we want to spend money, it's really important to track whether your money turns into results. But it's really hard to get results if you don't have the ability to track. So figuring out other ways of tracking your results is important, which means connecting different dots and different systems. I think that the other challenge to think about, depending upon what kind of company you are, I mean, even small companies end up with challenges, which is, negativity. When you jump into conversations, you run the risk of getting into it with somebody. You have somebody who's going to come to your site who, might disagree with your creative, may just not like your product, etc. Depending again what your product is. I mean, we all know the internet is full of trolls. So dealing with trolls, dealing with negative comments from a customer service perspective. I mean, I have gone online and negatively posted on a company that I felt I could not get a response from. I have used LinkedIn, I have used Twitter, I have used Facebook, and I go and I post something and I tag. Nobody wants to be called out in public, right? That is the public forum. It is the public square. And literally have resolved big customer service issues because I went on to whatever platform you pick and posted a comment. Sometimes it's the fastest way to get a resolution. But if you're the host of that, you need to be paying attention to that. It is part of managing your brand reputation. It's part of managing your customer service activities. Companies that, are doing both marketing and customer service. If you get big enough and you look at big companies, there's AT&T marketing its products, and then there's AT&T customer service has its own handles. Ask Chase is the Chase handle for problems. Chase is out, marketing the new Sapphire card in 75,000 miles if you sign up. So balancing customer service, negative comments, and marketing yourself is very important. And once you engage in the conversation around those trends that we were talking about earlier, and you decide to jump in on something, and part of your customer base doesn't agree with what you're jumping in on, plan to hear from them. We all know the word boycott. And so social is also the first place that people just, want to rally their like-minded team members together and stick it to somebody. So, there's a lot of companies who have had to deal with that challenge. When it happens, it is absolutely no fun. And it can cause a lot of sleepless nights. Mm-hmm. So be ready to deal. And the worst thing you can do is ignore a mad person like that. I mean, that is the absolute worst thing you can do, is to not address it, because there'll be 20 people behind them. Go on Twitter and see what happens when you type in West Elm customer service. The world hates West Elm, like it is. And so it's really important to answer people.
Definitely.
Can I say too that we're also living in a world where before people even buy from you, people will check out, and maybe this is from the Gen Zers, will literally check out everything about you. Did the CEO say something racist a million years ago? I mean, people will literally read everything about you before they make a purchase. And even when we were talking about reviews, that is more important now than ever before. So that's just adding that tidbit in there as well.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it is a way for people to be to do research. We recently had a client who was putting forth a pretty heavy lift, kind of like a mental health program, like a Headspace kind of app, that sort of thing. And we were working with that and trying to put a plan together. And as we were doing our research, and we were doing testing, we weren't going out in a big way. And we finally came back to them and we said, there's just not enough validity about your team online for people to trust to fork over $350. Like the doctors, the psychiatrist that you have, on the video on your website has like 14 followers on Twitter. He's not posted anything in 3 years. He looks like a bot. You Google his name, there's no content coming up in the search engines. You look on LinkedIn and he has no endorsements. But you have him on a YouTube video on your website. But I'm poking around and, I think, and I said to them, I think before you really start trying to do customer acquisition, you need to have a more solid 360 content imprint across multiple channels, because that research factor that you're talking about is real. And I mean, I've gotten to the point where I personally try and figure out whether something's going to get shipped to me from China. I mean, I have my late night Instagram shopping binges, don't we all? And, I'm tired of like all of a sudden something shows up and it's the wrong size, whatever. I can't get it back to China because it's going to cost me $90 to ship something back. So, figure like just being transparent, and making sure that you are managing your brand reputation. That is what social is now. You could say it's social media marketing, but it is the place where you manage your brand reputation, and the place you need to, that and customer service on the phone or via chat are the three places that people decide whether your brand is a good brand or not.
Totally. I really appreciate you guys sharing those challenges, and I think it's sort of it's an interesting reminder. One of you said at the beginning, social media is not easy. I think that sort of really nails down that sentiment. I think there's so much that goes into every single decision made on social media, made in marketing in general, that people don't think about. So I really appreciate that insight. Just to sort of wrap things up, I'd love to hear what your favorite social media channel or marketing tool is and why.
I do a lot of Instagram all day, every day right now. I have a very big presence of clients selling concert tickets, and artists are super active. Instagram actually sells things. Facebook also sells things. Twitter doesn't sell things for very well. I mean, it's possible, but we don't see it convert the way that Instagram and Facebook convert for us. I think there's a lot of reasons why that is, but from a usage perspective, we do that all day, every day. From a personal perspective, Instagram and Pinterest, because it's just, I mean, it is the world's biggest pile of magazines, and it is the way to go visit every museum and fabulous art gallery around the world. For me, when the world got really bad during the pandemic, I just stopped following a lot of things, and I just started following every museum, and started, you started to see the museum community doing virtual tours and using reels, and people were getting really creative. And so the travel aspect of Instagram for me personally is something that I enjoy as a consumer. I don't have a customer that I can necessarily do that with. And from Pinterest perspective, I mean, who just doesn't like to look at bathroom tile for 2 hours?
Love it.
I mean, for me, if you ask me this question at a different time, I'll probably have a different answer. And I think that's just because I love to explore different platforms, and because everybody knows Instagram, Facebook, and stuff like that, Twitter. And one social media platform I'm loving right now is a platform called Somewhere Good, and I'll add it to the chat so people can check it out. It's literally brand new, just launched like a couple of weeks ago, and it's a new audio platform for community conversations. It's like their whole thing is like bringing social back into social media. Doesn't have any ads, there's no followers, there's no likes, there's no feed. And what I love most about Somewhere Good is that it really just reimagines what social media could be if we actually used it to connect with others without any fluff, right? Without any marketing and stuff like that. It wasn't built to be like the next Instagram or TikTok or Clubhouse. Like, I really love that feel. I just feel like we're missing that in social media today. But if we're talking marketing and business, Instagram is just really such a powerful tool. I know that TikTok is doing great things, and all of these platforms, were created for different things and have different audiences. But I do think Instagram is just that one platform that brings everyone together. And I feel like their work to kind of create more products specifically for startups and small businesses will really help them. There's a major program that Instagram is rolling out, and scholarship money they're giving small businesses to kind of learn how to use the platform a little better, because it's not easy. Like, there's a lot of learning, just like with any new product that's out there, there's a lot of learning that comes with, new products and features. So I really love Instagram, the platform. I love the way they do business. And particularly, and I do think that it's a really great place for a startup to grow. You can find your community there if you do it really well. I mean, a video can go viral and then you can kind of like spin off from there or not, right? So I really love that, the playfulness of that. But I'm going to go ahead and put Somewhere Good in here and hope y'all check it out. I think it's just a really great space to get to know people. And of course, business opportunity can come from there. And I think this is any platform that's like an audio platform. Even if you don't use it personally, it's still good to go on there and hear, right? The social listening, hear what people are talking about, what's new, what's trending, what are some ideas that you can kind of bounce off of people, or maybe you could just talk to people about your business and see what people think. So never rule out platforms just because they're not marketing based.
Totally. I'm really excited to try that out. I got a little bit into Clubhouse, but I feel like seems like a different take on it. So I'm excited to try that. So one final question for both of you before we wrap things up. This is a question from Tyler. Can a company do social media marketing and growth well without putting money into ads?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, Facebook got everyone addicted and it grew big, and now it's hard. Everything that we talked about earlier of, it's hard to cut through the clutter. You got to make sure you have the right content, etc. I mean, at one point it's just it's tough. You don't want to go out and just buy followers, because that's never going to work for you. But paying to put yourself in between two posts on Instagram that are related to what you're trying to do, that's worthwhile. And at one point, yes, becomes somewhat necessary from a product marketing perspective. I think the influencer marketing world, which to me is just astonishing at what it's become, that is another paid form of social media. And, if you had told me 10 years ago that, somebody would be making $1 million just because they post on Instagram, I would have asked you what you had just smoked. But those types of programs as well, because there's so many different levels of influencers, that's also a way to approach it. It isn't just about buying an ad. There's product placement. I mean, I've used to do product placement in music videos all the time. Instagram and influencer marketing is another version of product placement, and there's different ways of buying that. It doesn't always have to be cash. Although these days it mostly is cash, at least a little bit of cash plus. Gone are the days of it, just, hey, do you want this for free? And will you talk about it? So I think, you're going to have to face spending money at one point. It is word of mouth is strong, but it takes money to get into enough mouths for it to be strong.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want startups and small businesses to understand this absolute fundamental truth, is that marketing is a pay to play environment. Like, it just is. And I think sometimes those who are not well versed in marketing kind of just think they see things and kind of take it for granted that it's there. They're like, oh, wow, this really cool graphic. Like, someone, like basically didn't sleep at night just to put that out there for you to see it, right? So we're in a pay to play place. And this is like, once you understand that, then you understand, all right, we can create all these things. We can even do some brand marketing, right, to get people interested and to believe in our brand. But ultimately, you want to put some money behind some of the work that you're doing to amplify what you're doing. Now, I know that small businesses, the number one problem that they have is that they don't have access to capital. So completely understand if you can't put thousands of dollars behind it, but I mean, throw $5 out there behind a post, or $20 or $15, or tell yourself this year, we're going to spend $2,000 on marketing. I just think it's really problematic these days to say, I'm just going to market for free. Like that's not possible. And I never want to say nothing is not possible, but it's just not. If we're talking about, especially as a startups are meant to grow and scale large. There are some businesses that don't really want to grow large. They kind of mom and pop business. So those are different. But if you're talking about as a startup that wants to scale and you're bringing something innovative to the world, you have to put money behind that. And that is the reason why people look to venture capitalists or talk to investors or raise money, right? And you just can't. I mean, think about all these major companies we see. They put millions of dollars towards their marketing. And here are small businesses working with nothing and expect to get to that level. It's impossible. It really truthfully is. So I encourage you, if there's nothing else you remember from this, is to definitely take some time to see what money you can put behind the work that you're doing to amplify it. Even if you're already doing well, putting money behind that really will help, again, people who need you find you and maybe open you up to more opportunities and more markets that you were not able to access without the funding.
And again, that goes back to the focus on who it is, right? Don't spread yourself thin. We recently just delivered a quote unquote launch plan to a water brand who has existed for 7 years, but they only exist in the northwest part of the country. They're in Seattle and Portland, and they've slowly been trickling down into some high-end luxury, I hate even the term luxury grocery store, but in San Francisco and LA, where you have grocery stores like Erewhon that charge $28 for a quart of strawberries from wherever. This brand has slowly been trickling down into these other stores by word of mouth from being a local brand and just building a local brand. The water is from a mountain stream in Oregon. It's, a part of Oregon that is well known for its hiking. And so their launch plan is just to launch from Seattle and Portland into the rest of the West Coast. So they're not even thinking about, how do I get somebody in Boston or New York to buy this water? Mm-hmm. They're just staying focused in a particular area. So I think depending upon what your product is, again, social media is a part of your business plan. It is not your business plan. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people sometimes are just like, we're just going to do it through social. I had an experience 2 years ago with someone who was the former CEO of a very large company, and his partner and two partners, one who was the CTO of 2 other companies, and their entire media plan was social media, and that they were going to hit a particular reach. And by reaching that 2%, putting X number of dollars behind it, that they were going to earn this much revenue. And at one point, they came in, there are days you have to fire a client. And I said, I'm sorry, your expectation level is just completely out of whack. You're one of the smartest, you've done a million things in your life. I can tell you right now that this thing is not going to work if this is your plan. So social media is not your business plan. It's a part of your business plan.
Thank you so much. What a great point to end on. Thank you to both of you for all of your amazing insights. I'll pass it over to Wendy for some final words.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you all so much for being here today. I think we can give a big virtual round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. I know I learned a lot in this session, so I hope you all did too. The recording will be shared on the Miles registration page. And if you have any other questions for me or the panelists, please feel free to send them over, and I'm sure they'd be happy to connect with you all. But thank you all so much. Have a great evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.